Hi, this is Jim Musser with Upstream Ministries on the Views from Downstream channel, episode 39. And this week we're talking about change and money. And I mentioned on Monday that change and money are both topics that a lot of people, particularly within the church, are uncomfortable with. And then on Wednesday, I talked about the need to trust God in the midst of making changes, that we know that there may be a price to pay in making those changes, but we trust God to provide. And so today, I just want to focus on a story, first of all, that John tells in chapter 6 about the feeding of the 5,000. And John tells us that Jesus asked Philip, how are we going to feed all these people with just what we have? And John says that he said this to test him because he already had in his mind what he was going to do. And I think one of the things that we need to realize is if God is calling us to do certain things, then he's going to test us whether or not we're going to trust him. And that's what it means to walk by faith. That we, even though we can't work it out of our mind how this is going to work, that by faith we trust God that it will, whatever he's calling us to do. And I really believe, just from the scriptures, that God is calling us to train up adults to disciple others, and particularly their own children. I think that's clear. It's clear in Deuteronomy 6 and Deuteronomy 11, in Matthew 28, where we are to go into all the world and make disciples. The scriptural evidence that discipleship is to be at the center of what the church does is overwhelming. And we need to change. But again, as I've said this week and earlier, that change may come at a cost because people do not like change. They will have excuses why they can't accept the change. It may be they're in the discipleship area, well, I don't have time to be trained by someone in discipleship. My life is just too busy. And my kids would do better here in the church, learning from the professionals. They may have all kinds of excuses. But the reality is the church is to be about making disciples. And so that's the decision that church leaders have to make. And if you haven't been doing that in years, really making disciples, you've just been focusing on preaching and programs, then that's the thing that you need to do is gather your leadership and to say, okay, God tells us that we have to make disciples. That's our purpose on this earth. We're going to do that. And we're going to make sure that others are able to do that. So that means we're going to have to train them up. And then you began to sort out what that's going to look like and what that's going to require. But you don't stop with the idea because it's going to be too challenging, too costly. You have to move in faith in fulfilling God's will, his commandments, and then trust him that he will provide whatever you need to do so. And in my estimation, that is what's lacking in most churches. They fear the consequences of this kind of change, this kind of challenge to adults, that they need to learn how to follow Jesus and be trained up in how to do that, and then to go out and train others, including their own children. It's just a fact that what the Lord wants is to us to make disciples. It is also a fact that in most churches, people are not trained to do that. So you have to take that command and then change how we've approached discipleship and turn it into a biblical imperative that we train up these men and women to disciple, to be discipled, and to disciple their own children. So I'm going to leave that there at a lot, but I hope it's challenging to you, and whether you're a church leader or a parent, that this will get you thinking and energized to really step out in faith and do what needs to be done to make disciples. And I'll leave it there, and we'll see you next week.